Okay, everybody, it's 3 p.m. Thank you for joining our first event, Momentum Works event in online. Thank you so much for joining. So today's topic is food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia. Excited to take you guys through this 1 hour. Okay, about Momentum Works, you know about us, so I'm going to skip this slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, an introduction about the team that worked on this project. So we have Jangan, myself, Liz, who led the report and the insights, Sabrina, Brian, Elodie, and beyond. So some of us will be here today just to share the insights in our report and more. Next slide. So this is our 4th annual food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia report. Most of you, I hope, have read the news and seen the numbers in the papers and the media. So today we are going to go deep into some of these numbers, but we will not be going through the report. If you have not downloaded the report, do it. It's free for a limited time. Okay, next slide. But at the same time, I wanted to also highlight some of the immersions. Okay, so today is the last day to register for our live commerce business immersion, and there's also a food and beverage business immersion coming up. So register to get first mover advantage. And the reason why we're doing this immersion and why I'm sharing this with all of us in this sharing today is that we've done a number of immersions for our clients in the second half of last year, especially in November last year, where we did this for a number of clients last year. And what we realized was that there's actually things change a lot in China, especially. And you will see in this sharing later in the next few slides why the live commerce is impacting not just ecosystem, thanks Alex, but also other like the food delivery business as well as other ancillary service. So this one I will actually get Jangan, Liz, and Sabrina to share a bit more. Okay, thanks. Okay, next slide. So in the next 45 minutes, I'm just opening, we're going to be covering quite a number of things: global development, Southeast Asia trend, numbers, key players and strategy, where to find growth, and what will happen in 2024. So next slide, the numbers. We'll go through that. Next slide. And a year of consolidation. Next slide. So Jangan, Liz, Sabrina will go through. So just to kick us off, whilst we tune up the audio, what else would you like to address today? So there's 4 key topics happening: Temu, Lazada, Shopee versus TikTok, China demographic. If we have some time, Jangan will answer that. So just do a quick poll. Okay, numbers coming in.
The results of the poll. Shopee versus TikTok Shop. Okay, if we have extra 5 minutes towards the end, we'll discuss about Shopee versus TikTok Shop, because that's quite a big topic in Southeast Asia, the whole tech ecosystem last year. So thanks for the vote. Next. So first, I think we're going to talk about the global development in food delivery and some of the trends that we see and some of the global players which are actually ahead of Southeast Asia, and that will impact how we assess this region. So at the background of this image, you will see, this is the photo I took in Shenzhen about 2 months ago. It's a Meituan driver having an Ele.me helmet, and you will see this theme quite common across the food delivery scene in different regions. And next page, please. So last year, this is the stock market performance of the various food delivery platforms across the world. And you will see that when you do a comparison, and Doordash is performing rewarded exceptionally well by the capital market, whilst Meituan has been punished and the stock price dropped more than half. So what is behind this? We will zoom into Doordash and Meituan and the market they are in and the plans they have. Next page. First, Doordash. So this is the leading player in the US. As you can see, in 2023, so Doordash market share has grown to 2/3 of the US market. That's almost approaching Meituan's market share in China. And they are having good free cash flow, which allows them to invest. I think in a recent interview with the Financial Times, Doordash CEO Alex Xu actually said that they have 2 parts of expansion. First, out of the US, and second, out of the restaurants. So there's a lot of analysis about why Doordash is particularly successful versus other players. And if you look at some of the articles and analysis written by analysts, and quite often they will tell you that, okay, they have a very, very expanded merchant network, they care about riders, etc., etc. But I think if you know the organization well, if you know the founder, if you know this, what's their style, you will get a better picture. They actually spend a lot of time on the ground. And tech-wise, we don't see much difference between them and their competitors. And our friends at Meituan are very adamant that DoorDash has learned a lot from Meituan. I mean, with these founders being Chinese immigrants in the US when they were kids. Next page. So when we talk about Meituan, and one thing you notice is that, of course, it's performing particularly badly. And we all know that, okay, the context of the last 2 years is the whole tech rout in China. And of course, part of that is because of the confidence about the macroeconomy. Part of that is because of COVID. Part of that is because of the crackdowns that happened 2 years ago. But even if you benchmark Meituan against other Chinese tech players, it's also performing particularly badly. The only major tech company which was worse was JD.com, the e-commerce player challenged by Pinduoduo and Douyin. So Meituan is worse than Tencent, Baidu, and Alibaba. What happened? So this is from the earnings call. Wang Xin, the founder of Meituan, said in, I think it's 28th of November, 2023, that the current stock price only reflects the value of the food delivery business. He thinks that Meituan is severely undervalued by the capital market. And since he said this, the share price dropped another 30%. So obviously, I mean, there's a severe lack of confidence. We'll dissect Meituan's businesses and we'll see that, okay, food delivery, their core, which is also the theme of our discussion today, is doing okay. But there are two parts of Meituan's initiatives. I mean, first in their core, which is in-store, which is equivalent to, I think, Douyin that Grab is launching in Southeast Asia, which captures most of their advertising revenue from the merchants. That's under threat from Douyin, TikTok's Chinese cousin. And the second part is amongst the new initiatives. This gets a little bit confusing. Meituan has Meituan Grocery, which is fresh on demand, first party. And they also have Meituan Select, which is community group buy, pre-order and delivered, fulfilled the next day. So that's bleeding quite a bit. So of course, there are other business that Meituan is doing. Next page. When you go to the details, you probably have read coverages throughout the year that Douyin has, or TikTok's Chinese version, has made local services a key part. And they have multiple initiatives helping merchants distribute vouchers and working with Alibaba-owned Ele.me food delivery platform to fulfill some of the food delivery orders. On the right of this image, you will see two screenshots. And you can see how these two players are fighting against each other. On the left, you see live stream, but that's from Meituan, not Douyin. On the right, you see a marketplace plus review vouchers, and that's from Douyin, not Meituan. So you can see that Douyin is trying to leverage its massive user base to monetize in different ways. And we already know that they are doing it big in e-commerce, and we can see it in Southeast Asia. And local services is something that they have put a lot of effort in China. And so we can't rule out that they will not do the same in Southeast Asia. So the advantages and disadvantages of both platforms when they fight against each other, we have listed on the left. I think throughout the year, you can see that Meituan is actively and rigorously defending their turf. And a key strategy they're using is what we call deterrence, right? Lower the prices to consumers, lower the commission to merchants, and make the whole sort of operations more efficient so that it becomes less attractive to a potential new entrant. And I mean, of course, their best hope is that, hey, Douyin, leave me alone. Channel your 800 million active users to e-commerce, challenge Alibaba, challenge JD, don't challenge us. But of course, this is an ongoing process. And I think this is something which is very much worth watching, because if TikTok does something similar in Southeast Asia, I think all the players need to be very careful about. Next page. So this is community group buy. And some of you might remember about 2 years ago, there was what people call the second war of 1,000 group buys in China. Meituan won the first war and became a large local services player. And the second war is about community group buy. You assign a community leader, you pull orders, and you deliver to the leader will distribute the next day. So after 2 years, back then, I think every large tech company in China has either jumped in themselves or backed a player in this battle. So after 2 years, only two viable national level players remained, Meituan and Pinduoduo. So interestingly, both are about roughly the same size in terms of GMV, about US $30 billion annualized. So that is about twice the total food delivery GMV in Southeast Asia. But the key difference is that Pinduoduo in this market is almost breaking even. They are losing a bit of money, but we heard from multiple sources that they're very, very close to breaking even. And Meituan is making actually big losses in this. So the question now becomes, how can Meituan reverse their fortunes to be at, because the company has been focused a lot on efficiency and being in a market that's so low margin that nobody else can win against it. But in this market, they have a formidable competitor who is actually very efficient. So how can they reverse their fortunes? Or as some people suggested, they should simply shut it down. So they will reduce their losses and Pinduoduo will sort of improve their share price as well.
So why are we looking at community group buy when actually we're talking about food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia? Is this a trend that you see carrying over in this region as well?
I think there are two paths, right? I mean, first, community group buy is largely focused on groceries, which I think since like 2 or 3 years ago has been identified as the next growth frontier by most food delivery players across the world, including Southeast Asia. Nobody back then had managed to crack grocery effectively at massive level. So this attempt in China is interesting. And the second is that we will go through that later, which is how do you expand your user base for your core services? And community group has been used in China by players as a measure method to reach out to consumers, which they had not been able to reach out to using normal food delivery services. So either way, it could be an expansion of the food delivery operations in Southeast Asia. Maybe not a priority now because everyone's fighting for profitability, but whatever they manage to ship there, I think offers some interesting lessons. So Meituan last year expanded into Hong Kong, I think April or May, using a name called Kita, or sort of similar to Cheetah. And according to our friends at Measurable AI, by November, so they are achieving 37% of market share in Hong Kong, which is slightly behind Foodpanda, which is the leading player, I think, with 42%. So, and we probably also know that around that time, Meituan sort of declined to acquire Foodpanda across Southeast Asia and other places. So the company has been very cautious in international expansion. So we took this photo in Singapore, and we believe that is the Foodpanda rider buying a Meituan bag on Taobao rather than actually having any affiliation to Meituan himself. But the company has been very cautious in international expansion, rightly so. So I think what they have told a few analysts is that they figure out it's very hard to make a profit in Southeast Asia. But that aside, I think for a company that large, just now we talked about just one segment of Meituan's business is already twice the GMV of the entire food delivery in Southeast Asia. And for organization point of view, how do they dedicate enough resources, people, and leadership attention to an array of different markets, which collectively contribute to what? 2-3% of your total GMV. From organization point of view, it's very, very difficult. Okay, we also saw last year, I think it's a collapse of investor confidence in 1P quick commerce. So dark stores were popular during the pandemic, 15 minutes delivery. I think for us in Singapore, there were a few players attempting that as well. And globally, there's lots of money pouring into this. But I think we see that retreat, we see lots of exits, we see lots of consolidations. The question is, does this model actually work? So this is the number we got from a Chinese 1P dark store player affiliated to a large platform. So they said, according to their operations, no matter how much they try, 4,000 orders per store per day is the bare minimum for them to operationally break even. And so anything below that, they can't optimize their assortment of SKUs. They can't optimize their delivery fleet well enough and to be operationally breaking even. Now, okay, this factors in multiple things, right? I mean, the consumption power, the density of the city, the topography, etc. So in each different market will probably be different. But I do think that the players each market will probably have a break-even point beyond this. With the average order size, you can break even. But I think now it's a bit hard because of the capital environment. Nobody has the ability or has the willingness to actually spend so much time to try to figure that out.
If you were to guess, like roughly break-even point for, let's say, a player in Southeast Asia, what do you think would be a good gauge? Do you think it would be around 4,000 orders per day?
I think first Southeast Asia is a diverse market, right? I mean, Singapore's spending power is very different from Indonesia's spending power, and the manpower cost of Malaysia is very different from the manpower cost of Vietnam. So if I were to guess, I would probably say that the city topography is different as well. So it's probably somewhere between China's level and India's level. And Zomato says that they have the positive contribution margin at 1,247 orders per store per day. Yeah. So it's probably higher than that. It's probably lower than China's, I don't know, 2,000 maybe. But we'll only find out if someone actually has done that and figured that out. Yeah.
Speaking of consumption power, right? Last year, Momentum Works actually launched our coffee report, and we introduced this thing called a Frappuccino Index. So this Frappuccino Index actually provides a fresh lens on global purchasing power and affluence through the eyes of a venti Starbucks caramel frap. So if you guys are interested, we actually have a website just for you guys to go and see. And of course, we've broken down the index based on different cities. I think we have to update it though, because the price of a venti Starbucks has increased in Singapore. And if you don't see your city here, but you're curious to know, just send us how much a cost of a venti caramel frap is in your city, and we'll try to add it into our website.
Sabrina drinks that once every week, so she helps us check the price in Singapore.
Yeah, that's how I know that it increased.
Okay, so we identified 4 key trends in 2023. It's about F&B industry rebound, Chinese chain brands, F&B intern Southeast Asia, restaurants progress on digitalization, and also towards the same goal, like different platforms accepting different strategies. So the first one is about the overall F&B industry, including online and offline. So a friend who's operating an Indonesian chain told us that it is a great year for F&B. So market sensing here, we made it based on the government statistics, and very interesting, you can see that including the Q4 result, based on the last 3 quarters, the 4-year number in 2023 is actually surpassed 2019. So yes, 2023 is the first year we come out of the pandemic.
I just want to add a caveat. I mean, some of you might see this number as being smaller than the numbers that Euromonitor put as the food services market size of Southeast Asia as a whole. We actually made an effort to go through different government statistics websites to comb through their sort of numbers, and this is what happens when we add all this together. How accurate this number is, I mean, depends on how accurate the government statisticians are. But I think the trend, if they use the same methodology, I think the trend is clear.
Yes. But actually, some high-end restaurants towards the premium market has different feelings. I think that maybe because some macro uncertainties like inflation, so middle classes are more cautious in their spending. Next, please.
Yeah, I think middle class go to high-end restaurants for anniversaries. Yeah.
Okay, so the second trend is about Chinese F&B brands entering Southeast Asia, which I believe that if you guys are based in this region, you must have noticed or heard from friends. So I remember that when I first came to Singapore in 2021, there are already Haidilao, Mixue, Chaji. I had the feeling like, oh, I was still in China at that moment. The entire intern and turned super popular. But look at this chart, you can see that in 2023, it was just like a boom. I mean, both categories and number increased crazily, right? So, and many of them actually chose Southeast Asia as their first destination, like Luckin.
So you guys might know that we run a blog platform in Chinese on WeChat as well, where I think now it's the most followed blog about Southeast Asia and emerging markets in general in Chinese. And like every week, we receive inquiries from F&B players saying that, hey, it's so competitive in China and we want to sort of expand outside China. And people told us that Southeast Asia is easy for us because we can find many people who speak Chinese. So many of them actually exploring this market. And what you see on this list is only a sample list of the players which actually expanded into this region in the last few years. There's much more. So this will bring a shake up because we know that, I mean, you see from the previous slide, I mean, the total pie of F&B, it's growing a little bit, it's recovering a little bit, but it's not growing that much. So that will bring an interesting shake up, and many of these players will probably fail. But nonetheless, if enough of them succeed, that brings interesting competitive pressure to the whole F&B scene in this region. Oh, these are the 3 photos I took last weekend in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So there's a new mall called The Exchange, which is affiliated to the newly opened second tallest building in the world in central Malaysia. And the premise is huge. I mean, it took me half an hour drive to actually find the entrance because it's so confusing with signage and stuff. But this was 3 p.m. And these three F&B outlets, Haiti, so you might know, is a premium Chinese bubble tea brand. A long queue, and we did assessment. We need to wait for like half an hour to get a cup of bubble tea. And of course, I'm not a big bubble tea fan as Sabrina is, so I was not too bothered. And Tyar, the sauerkraut fish that Liz mentioned about, also packed with people waiting outside. I think sauerkraut fish as a category is also quite popular in Indonesia at the moment. The third is interesting is beef noodles from the northwest of China, which is populated by ethnic Muslims. So that kind of halal noodles are actually quite popular in Malaysia now, and I think it's gaining popularity in Indonesia. So this is 3 p.m. and every restaurant is packed with people waiting outside. Of course, this is a new mall, right? Things might wear out in half a year's time, but you can see that it's a sign of like many Chinese F&B players coming to Southeast Asia. And last year, for people in Singapore, you will probably notice Luckin Coffee, which now has more than 10,000 stores in China. They opened about 30 stores in Singapore. Very stable and very aggressive. And Coty, which was founded by Luckin's original founders who were ousted from the company because of scandal, they launched in Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Singapore last year. So they are competing in the, I think, limited coffee scene in Southeast Asia. We actually have a full report on that. We did a poll on our WeChat platform, targeting the Chinese audience. We said, okay, how do we think Luckin is doing in Singapore? And to our surprise, 1,300 people actually responded, and more than half of them, I presume that many of them actually live in Singapore but originally from China, and they said that it's doing exceptionally well. So people seem to have that confidence in Luckin's ability. And of course, this year, we would probably see them expand into other countries. So when we see the Chinese F&B players, it's not only just the F&B players, they're also bringing their methodologies. Because these guys come from a very, very competitive environment, and to stay afloat, let alone thrive, they need to be very efficient operationally. So the image on the left of this slide, you can see is an advertisement at the Changi airport by this Shanghai-based branding consultancy called Hua & Hua. So on the right are a few case studies of what they have done. I mean, we mentioned about Mixue, which currently has about 4,000 stores in Southeast Asia. They created the whole branding as well as the whole storyline of the Snow King having a bump with a frog. Some people are saying that, oh, is that the serendipity or is that the spontaneous event? No, but it's actually a tool in a marketing package that franchises can choose. And they just buy the tool, they just hire the people, and then they have the whole methodology of how to shoot the video and make it viral. I have some friends who are 5 franchises of Meituan, and they told me that this is the easiest franchise to be because they don't have to think about anything. Of course, Hua & Hua also helped Haidilao, the hot pot chain, revamp their branding to be more international. They also helped, interestingly, Southeast Asia, a Singapore-based roast duck store, and they changed the whole slogan. And you can see the logo at the bottom. It's previously elegant of an image of a waiter in traditional attire. On the right is a duck with a number 2. So basically, this is what they call super science, something people remember. And they changed the whole slogan of the restaurant to the must-eat herbal duck in Singapore. So aligning the herbal duck category and Singapore. So when Chinese tourists go to Singapore, not only bak kut teh, but you can also have the herbal duck.
What's the similarity between number 2 with this and the fish? Why do people like using 2?
Oh, I don't know.
Xiao'er is actually the waiter in Chinese.
Okay. Yeah.
Waiter.
Waiter like Xiao'er, yeah. For instance, I mean, Taobao customer service is also called Taobao Xiao'er. So basically customer service. And I think they paid about 6 million for this branding exercise.
What's
R&D.
interesting is I feel like everybody we've taught this to who's Singaporean just agrees that the rebranding is very ugly. They can't believe that they paid so much for it.
But you can remember.
Yeah, but you can remember.
6 million RMB, not 6 million USD. So that works out to be about 900,000. Yeah. Still a lot of money. And that's not including the annual retainer they're doing. Next page, please. So last year, I think one of the key trends we put in our food delivery report is the fragmentation of F&B digitization. I mean, during the pandemic, everything went digital, and there are so many like new players raising money to actually target different parts of the digital experience, like reservation, ordering, payment, reviews, etc., etc. So last year we mentioned that the key food delivery platforms were actually trying to consolidate these. I mean, many of them launched or purchased post players. And what we see now is, I mean, the fragmentation remained, right? I mean, even in China, I think some of the largest food delivery players also questioning this investment in posts and this investment in large sort of on-the-ground sales force to help people to replace the posts. How much of that is worth it, right? So the fragmentation remains. I think it will probably be a natural course of being for a while. But what we find also interesting, next page, is people after pandemic, people talk about, I have online, I have like multiple branches, I have lots of people, I have lots of processes in the restaurant, and how do I manage all these people and organization effectively? Most of the restaurants we spoke actually for this exercise, they use the very traditional means. I mean, kind of digital, right? I mean, you have WhatsApp online for communications, groups, I mean, for people in branches to report problems, etc. We have Excel and something Google Sheets to do the planning, etc. And some of them actually used some tools like Staff Any, like QuickBooks, and we actually saw some restaurants actually use Slack. Some restaurant chains for Slack for the back office people. And we also see efforts by Lark, which is owned by ByteDance, to actually consolidate all these tools into one suite, which help them manage that. I think the Google Suite does something similar, but of course the functionality is a bit different. And let's not forget, I mean, we mentioned about Meituan being like 4,000 stores in Southeast Asia. For each major franchisee is a huge operation involving lots of people, and many of them part-time. It's actually not easy undertaking to manage them. Number 4, on the diverging strategies of platforms in 2023. So we'll go through that in details when we talk about platforms, but just top headlines. Grab sharpened focus on core food business. GoTo has a new CEO since June, and they realign the strategy. And I think a good move is they divested successfully to TikTok, and now allows the group to be more focused. Shopee, you hardly see Shopee mentioned about Shopee Food anymore. But as I think briefly mentioned, Shopee Food actually grew quite a bit. And it seems that the Shopee Food, with the exception of Vietnam, has been absorbed into Shopee as part of the Shopee total story to fight against TikTok. Lyman strengthened the ecosystem. They made a number of acquisitions of a post player, of a payment platform in Thailand. And I think they seem to be determined to be market number 1 in Thailand very soon. And of course, we have Delivery Hero, the owner of Baemin and Foodpanda. They were looking to divest less profitable markets, which next page is a whole saga happening with Foodpanda. There's lots of juicy details, which I will not go into that. But that shakes a little bit of the morale of the whole organization. Next page. Also, this Monday, Delivery Hero announced that they were selling the entire stock holding they had of Deliveroo, which is listed in London. We know that for a while, there were discussions about the Foodpanda and Deliveroo in Singapore and Hong Kong combining, because Deliveroo in this, especially at least in Singapore, they've occupied a good position for some of the premium customers and premium restaurants. So now with this divestiture, it seems that the potential merger is probably off the table as well. And if we look at the price of 1.13 pound per share, that's about 30% or 30% of what they bought it for 2 years ago. And that was, I think it was what, 360 pence? Okay, 3.6 pounds. Okay, next page. So our estimate for this region is that for a second year in a row, the growth of top line GMV of food delivery platforms is about 5%. That means basically in terms of top line, we have reached a state that the top line growth is happening, but it's limited. And that will require different methodologies and different operational sort of structures of different players, which is interesting, but probably less exciting for people actually involved in this, because you can't just throw vouchers as you used to. Next page. When we look at the different markets, Indonesia is still the biggest. A few highlights. I mean, Singapore has remained basically stagnant for 2 years in terms of top line, but look at the number, is still more than 50% of Indonesia's volume. And obviously, I mean, it's largely urban country with the capita almost 15 times that of Indonesia. There's lots of spending power. Most markets we see have a small growth, like low single digit, with Singapore being flat. And Vietnam, we saw a growth, actually quite significant growth. I mean, 20-something percent, 25, 27%. And of course, in most of the markets, you start to see like two leading players with a bit of like other players taking small market share. Next page. This is the number of the leading players. So bear in mind that when we do our total food delivery tally, we don't actually include those fulfilled by Lalamove and those like people placed directly with the restaurants. The restaurants send their own driver or Lalamove to fulfill. There's one interesting component of the whole market, which we are not including in this report, but I think it's worth mentioning. Next page. Is the self-operated delivery operations of QSRs, quick service restaurants, fast food chains in the Philippines. We haven't, because I mean, tallying the numbers takes lots of effort, so we haven't tallied the exact numbers of the different players. But I think various sources that we have get back to us of something similar to about 1/3 to 40% of the total food delivery platform GMV. We think it probably makes sense because if we just look at Jollibee per se, their annual sales is already much bigger compared to the total platform GMV in Southeast Asia. Interestingly, led a project last month for a client to look at the QSR market in Southeast Asia. We tallied the financials of all the major QSRs across the region. In other markets, you don't have anybody as dominant as Jollibee in the Philippines. But nonetheless, I mean, the sales volume of some of the large QSRs is actually quite significant. And of course, many of them choose to work with food delivery platforms for delivery, but this is a significant volume if they want to take in-house.
Gonna give Janggan a break. So we're gonna be talking about the key players as well as their key players in the region as well as their strategies. So of course, as mentioned by Janggan, Grab continues to extend their leadership in the region, where Foodpanda and Gojek actually saw a decline, while Shopee and Lineman had notable growth in the region. And of course, an industry veteran that we spoke to actually said that in 2023, every platform achieved some sort of profitability according to their own definition. So if you guys have read our Apples to Apples report, you'll know that there are different measures of profitability. And on the left, you can see this is where each of the companies are in terms of the different stages of profitability. So Grab and Delivery Hero have reached adjusted EBITDA break-even, but of course, they still have positive free cash flow and positive net income, whereas companies like Meituan and Uber have already reached positive net income. And of course, I think we're all looking forward to see GoTo's Q4 results to see whether or not they have reached adjusted EBITDA break-even.
I'm actually curious whether they include Tokopedia for the last month because, oh no, probably not. Probably not excluding because the deal only closing this year. Anyway, so yeah. Okay, that's a very short break. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but it highlights a few key things that each player is focusing on. And obviously the operations of each player in different countries. Next page. And this slide will be circulated so we can read that in detail on your own. What I want to focus a little bit on is we have lots of questions from investors, from different stakeholders, from analysts about, discount levels of different players and why some players seem to have like haphazard way of discounting. I mean, what's the rationale behind it? So this is something that we have been using to analyze large tech companies. I mean, the factors of leadership, people, organization, and product, and which one is more important? Because quite often for us to choose, I mean, which one to invest in, which one to buy shares for, which one to even work for, and you probably need to look at these factors, right? So I'm just going to throw a few questions, right? So for instance, if a food delivery company is global versus it's regional versus it's country only, so what kind of resources they can leverage? What kind of attention and focus of leadership they would have? Second, if the company is still run by its founder versus a company that's run by a professional manager, what difference does it make? And at which level of maturity that a founder becomes an obstacle to the company rather than a driving force? If a food delivery operation is part of a larger sort of tech measure with different diverse operations, and would that be a sort of positive sign for the food delivery part of the business, or would that be a drag for the food delivery part of the business because the leadership is divided in attention? So these are the questions that we have in mind when we look at and different players, and sometimes when you understand the styles of the leadership, when you understand how the organization is structured, when you understand the incentives of the key decision makers, the key people, then you roughly get a sense of, how this company would potentially move in the future. Whether you should worry about them as a competitor, you should, whether you can place a bet on them. Next page. So here we chose a few quotes from leaders of respective companies. And of course, in the case of GoTo, Delivery Hero, and Shopee, and we chose the leader who actually represent a company of the entire group. So of course, the different highlights, like Grab mentioned, the more affordable services this year, they have been pushing a lot on expanding their user base. GoTo divested Tokopedia, which took away a huge drag of the financials. And would they focus on Gojek, or would they focus on financial services? Delivery Hero, for a long time, functioning like a private equity organization. Combining different operations in different countries. Sometimes there's operational synergy, sometimes there's not. So in this new environment, how would they fare? Lineman, coherent transaction experience for all stakeholders, and they're buying a payment company. They have lots of other resources they can leverage as well, such as Line. But of course, this is also part of a large setup which has its own complexities, but they seem to be determined to become a market #1 in Thailand, and they're moving towards that. The last thing is Shopee Food. I know some people working on Shopee Food, they are not mentioned anymore in any of the earnings and stuff. And of course, we see the numbers still growing. But what I find interesting is the full fighting mode that Forrest Lee, the founder of C Group, actually mentioning in the employee letter. That's mainly against TikTok as a competitor, but we've been speaking with lots of people, and most people finding that, okay, so our companies at this stage with like more than 20,000 people, I don't understand what full fighting mode is. So it's a tricky part about, how do you build a cohesion organization? How do you make sure that people move according to the vision? Because founders, they are driven, but people who come along the way, how do you motivate them? What kind of motivation do you have for them? This all determines how they would go. Does Lima owned by Line? Partially, I think Line is a shareholder, but they merged with a local review site called One9. And actually, the CEO was the founder of One9. So they have some Line ownership, and they also have investors as well. I think GIC is the major investor in it. Next.
Okay, so the key question is where to find growth, based on the fact that you have seen many platforms achieve profitability and they want to remain it, so cannot burn money, and the competition is becoming intense. So we summarized 3 points: user base, advertising, and also use tech to develop operations. Yeah, so first, expanding user base. You can see that there's still quite a space for penetration. Considering Grab, the largest platform in the region, the monthly active users only have about 5% in comparison to the whole population here. So there are still 95% untapped. So where to find them?
I think the 5% is the entire Grab, also includes ride-hailing. So when it comes to food delivery, it's even smaller. So there's a whole part of this region which has not been tapped by food delivery. And of course, the question many people ask is that, will they ever be tapped because of the spending power? I think at the end of the day, so somebody has a simple formula, right? If your income is higher than that of a food delivery driver, you should go and you should order food delivery. If your income is lower, they should go and become a food delivery driver. That's a simple metric. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question here, I have a poll for you. This one, right? Okay. So which one should be the biggest potential in major cities, expansion into smaller cities, or tourists?
Interesting. So of course, most people are saying that it's expansion to smaller cities, which I think some of the players are doing. And major cities, I think there are still a lot of people who are untapped in major cities, but to serve them well, you have to move down a little bit in terms of offering, in terms of pricing, etc., etc. So I have a natural inkling that the major cities would probably be something that the platforms are focusing on tackling, and smaller cities, we still see expansion. There are still, for instance, there are still cities in Indonesia that Shopee Food tries to expand in. I think Grab still has I think 20 smaller cities in Thailand, which they have yet to tackle. So there's still a bit of room there. But of course, bigger cities, smaller cities, cities in different countries with different topographies would require totally different methodologies. Next. And of course, one thing that I think some players are trying to do, at least Grab, Gojek, is to segment the users, right? I mean, basically economics. Previously, you have one standard offering. Whoever who is willing to pay more, you can't capture the full value. Whoever who is not able to afford this offering get priced out. Now you have like 3 different tiers, at least Grab is offering in many markets, that allows premium users to pay more for faster service, that allows other people to pay for a sort of a slower service, etc. So this is just a simple illustration. I think there's more fine granularity you can do, and if you have a larger user base, this is what the Chinese tech companies have, or at least they think they have perfected. And in Southeast Asia, there's still a lot of room you can do, and you need to have enough data, have enough user base to be able to do it effectively. Next page. So Grab has been promoting a lot across the region, and I think that's the key driver for them to expand their monthly transacting user base from, I think, 28 million to 34 million over the last 5 to 6 quarters. Next page. And of course, advertising is big. And this year, we see more and more players placing advertisements into the platforms. Next page. So large, what is Lee's Bagels? Your bagels, okay.
Yeah, my brand, big brand, sorry.
Fictional brands, okay. Anyway, small F&B merchants, I mean, they will place like, performance-driven ads, maybe some kind of branding, but they don't really have the budget for that. But you have large F&B chains, you have FMCG brands, which hope that, okay, if you buy a meal, just add ice cream or add a can of Coke together with that. And of course, you have financial services, which have traditionally, I mean, in this region, been struggling with higher customer acquisition cost. So transactional platforms become something that they are willing to at least try to invest in. So in China, we know that I think 37 to 40% of Alibaba's revenue comes from advertising or different kinds of sort of services which are basically advertising. So there's, I think, quite a bit of room that the players here can exploit. But of course, how well you can do that, I mean, depending on, I mean, what's the results of your advertising and how big brands, I mean, would shift their sort of marketing budget allocation practice. My name as well. Okay, this page I didn't read in detail before that. Continuous operational optimization. Of course, there are a lot which can be done. We just list 2 simple things here. I mean, group orders and batched orders, right? I mean, basically, how do you sort of optimize the price, optimize the efficiency throughout the whole operations? I mean, if you look at the Meituan's experience, they'll tell you that there's no sort of magic. It's basically you have a strong sort of back end which allows you to optimize operations at each different level, squeezing 1 to 2 cent savings from each part of the operations. Then you have a cost structure that your competitors can't beat. Next page. So this is the question that we had a brief discussion. I mean, I took this photo in, I think, Hangzhou, near Alibaba headquarters in China. So this is the locker. And of course, lots of people asking us like, do you think this will ever exist in Southeast Asia? And there are different, what do you call that, perspectives on this. And what do you guys think?
Here's the result.
Okay, most people believe that, interesting, most people believe that it's in some places. Yeah.
70% feels it's going to happen.
Okay, so one thing about this in China is that, and of course, I mean, actually quite a few people ask me personally that, how do you keep the food warm? Thanks, Harris. Yeah. Saja is Malay, not Bahasa. Is Bahasa Melayu, right? Which is also Bahasa. What's the word in Indonesian?
Bahasa Indonesia?
No, the Saja?
Maybe Saja.
Saja, okay.
Saja, okay.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate coming up. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Next time we should put a slash. So so some people ask, how do you keep the food warm? But actually it's not a consideration, because what we saw in China, so what problem this thing solves is mainly the lift, right? I mean, because buildings in China are packed, especially during lunch hour. For people to come and pick their food, I mean, either the rider has to wait a long time for the lift to go up, or people have to, I mean, the consumer has to wait for a long time for lift to come down. So quite often they just place this into the locker, and when the lift comes down, they will just retrieve from the locker. Rarely we see that people take more than 5 minutes to retrieve that, but it's huge savings for platforms with large density. Next page, please. So what will happen in 2024? Well, this is, of course, previous page. This is the Robinhood rider with the lineman bag, and we see that increase in common with different platforms that riders mix and match. Next, crystal balling has becoming harder in the current environment since the pandemic, because every year people make predictions at the beginning of the year. They realize the year will evolve very differently compared to their predictions. And I think one gentleman on this page might come back to become the centerpiece of the world. So something which, I mean, different people have different perspectives. But anyway, next page. So a few questions we are throwing out, right? So we'll go to focus more on or divest Gojek, because we know that I think Gojek has been under a bit of pressure operationally from Grab in Indonesia. But since the divestiture of Tokopedia, I think there might be some strategic rethink which is worthwhile at the go-to level. I mean, the affiliated bank that they are doing, and Jago is doing exceptionally well. So there's a lot of, and if they can keep the payment and the financial services piece, there might be something more interesting. So if divestiture is a possibility, will Grab or TikTok be a potential meaningful buyer? Interesting thought. Next. How will Foodpanda exit? I think that leakage of Grab talking to Foodpanda was kind of unfortunate, and you can read the gossip grapevine to see what exactly happened. But because now Grab is a public company and they're probably more concerned about antitrust measures, they try to buy a taxi company in Singapore, and the antitrust watchdog in Singapore is still reviewing that. It has been a few months, and acquiring Foodpanda across multiple markets will probably have more scrutiny. So what exactly will happen in the market? I mean, because I think Deliveroo seems determined to exit this market, and leaving that in a sudden will probably cause lots of chaos. So how exactly will things evolve? Will there be another buyer? Interesting question. Next. So will TikTok be a potential disruptor? So they are big in local services. There have been repeated rumors in the last quarter of 2023 that they might be buying Ele.me from Alibaba, the food delivery platform. So the three gentlemen on this page, you probably know the two on the right very well. Shou, which is the CEO of TikTok, and Yiming, which is the founder of ByteDance. And I would encourage you to watch the guy on the left, Lido, more closely, because I think lots of major decisions, and he plays a very, very big role in it, including what's happening now as we speak. Next page. You want to talk about this?
No, you go ahead.
We actually used quite a bit of ChatGPT while developing this report. I mean, first with free cash flow, right? We chat Doordash's financial statements in ChatGPT, say, give me the free cash flow. And we also asked the question that, will TikTok be a threat to food delivery platforms in Southeast Asia? Then it gave me this. And I was trying to argue that it doesn't make sense because you can't see TikTok competing against TikTok, because one of the players here is actually wearing a TikTok helmet. But then I think that's when ChatGPT started hallucinating. So I didn't get anything better after that. But I think TikTok could be an interesting player to watch if they started entering the advertising space or the fulfillment space of food themselves. Next page. While we're doing the study, we spent quite a bit of time on the ground talking to lots of people. And actually, here's a big thanks to the people who have shared their perspectives, who have shared and some of them shared their restaurants, shared their numbers, some of the post players, some of the payment players, some of the fleet owners. A big thank you. And of course, we have observed a fair share of rider fashion, mix and match in this region. Next page. Oh, yeah, we talk about the immersions, and I'll be leading the delegation in March to China. You will get firsthand of live commerce ecosystem, meet relevant stakeholders. Do join us if you can. I think we still have a few spots. Next page.
And if you register by today, you have a first mover discount of 20%. Today is the last day. Yes.
Okay.
Register just means putting numbers.
Yes, just fill in the form and we'll contact you.
Cool. You have details on this page, which you can read. Next page. I think people want to talk about Shopping and TikTok Shop, which we have 2 minutes left. I think we should do an e-commerce report earlier. Last year we did it in July. I think this year we should probably do it earlier, so that people look at additional work. So I think TikTok Shop, the move to acquire, or sort of the move to take control of Tokopedia, I think it's a master stroke. And from the different sources that we have from Indonesia, they have recovered about 50 to 60% of their pre-ban volume. They're I think approaching like 2 million orders a day in Indonesia. And across different markets, we heard from sources on the ground that they're becoming a bit more cautious with the government. They become a bit cautious about not being too aggressive in promotions. That I would say makes them a even more formidable competitor to the platforms in Southeast Asia. Lazada, with its layoffs, and of course people look at layoffs, and I think we explained that in our that a few episodes, that there's actually much bigger play behind the layoffs, and this whole organizational restructuring for Lazada to be able to dig in for the long term, for them to move more flexibly in a competitive environment. And one thing, even with the full consignment cross-border from China, I don't think Lazada is seeking market number one. I think they have made it clear with their restructuring moves. But the question is, what will Shopee do? What will Shopee respond to that? And we know that Shopee promoting live against TikTok Shop, it's been very hard. But they have the advantage of being local, understanding the market, having local heads, having a good financial ecosystem on top of the e-commerce. So there are advantages they can still play. Let's see how they will leverage that over the next few quarters.
Maybe we can do a podcast just on this since people have asked.
Sure.
So stay tuned. If you guys have any questions, like feel free to leave them in the chat. We'll try our best to answer them in an upcoming episode of our podcast or on our TLD blog. So if you guys are interested in hearing more about Lazada's layoffs or maybe Shopee and TikTok Shop, do subscribe to the Impulso Podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and some of our episodes are on YouTube as well. Thank you for joining our event today. We will be sending this deck to you guys soon, and the recording will be available on YouTube by this Friday. Thank you. Bye-bye.